Hi, I'm Ken Kessler, and welcome to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I want to start by saying thanks for joining us. That said, just so there are no misunderstandings, there won't be any music played here. This is a place for conversation. I'll talk about Christmas music and some related topics, sometimes by myself and sometimes with guests. If you're looking for music, just go to soundsofchristmas.com and click on the tree or the player on the front page or on the Listen Now page. We play the best variety of Christmas music all year long. Well, except in October when we play the best variety of Halloween music. Today, we're joined by someone else who loves Christmas so much, they also have a Christmas-related podcast. Welcome, Rikki Meece from the Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe podcast.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm very happy to have you. Let's start with what led you to create the Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe podcast.
You know, I had it in my mind for several years before it actually launched. I knew I wanted to do a podcast. I knew it was to be Christmas related. Even though that's kind of an independent niche audience, it was still something that I really wanted to pursue. But I had to wait for the right partner to find that person to join me to really get it up and off the ground. So when we created the Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe Christmas podcast, the beginnings of it were already in the works about 1.5 to 2 years before that. I had an outline of shows, potential guests, just like you would make a business plan to start and open a new business. That's what I did to plan and create a Christmas podcast.
And I should mention for anybody who doesn't know the Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe podcast that when she says we, Rikki does this podcast with Mary Richards, who does the Christmas news related part of the podcast. That's right,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Is there any particular significance for the title that you chose, Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe?
Yeah, we in mentioning Mary Richards, she is this delightful little, I call her our version of Cindy Lou Who. She even kind of looks like her, but I can just imagine her as a little girl being that way. And Mary and I actually work together at the same radio station. So we are broadcasters by day, podcasters by night, but we're in a very stress-filled environment at the station we work at because it's a news talk station. And anyone who's been listening to the news over the last few years, you know that's been a little bit of a roller coaster. And it turned out that by chance, we kind of stumbled across each other. And when I found out that she loved Christmas as much as I do, and I'm like, what are we waiting for? Let's dive in. And coming up with the name was the hardest part, because each time I try Googling or going online to one of the social media sites and typing in something, there was already an identity of some sort of that out there, whether it was a podcast or not. But then I started thinking about Mary and I individually. Mary is definitely the Hallmark and movie and TV person of the pair. And I am much more the music person of the two of us. Then I started thinking, well, she's kind of like mistletoe with that whole romance of the holidays. And I'm much more of, if I had to figure out one sound effects to get someone's attention that would immediately remind them of Christmas, it would be a jingle bell, a sleigh bell. And that's how we came up. So I'm kind of the sleigh bell. She's kind of the mistletoe. We had to throw in Christmas in there somewhere just to make sure people weren't confused. And that's the name. It's long, I know that, but we abbreviated on mine, but it's who we are.
Oh, I think it's terrific, and it does really capture what you do. The Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe podcast is really, I know you love the music, but you really cover everything that's Christmas related.
Yeah.
Recipes, gift giving, books, movies, TV, really just about anything that you can think of. And I know you launched this like a Christmas in July kind of thing, in July, really far away from what people usually call the traditional Christmas season. Was there anything in particular behind launching it in July? It was July, I think it was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
It will be 2 years this coming July.
Okay.
So when we got ready to launch, we weren't as prepared and ready as we would have liked. In fact, the first episode, I had the right guest, but we didn't have the technical equipment set up as well as we wanted to. So the audio on that episode really bothers me. And everybody says, oh, it's just opening night jitters. And I'm like, no, no, it's not. I know what clear audio is supposed to sound like. And you find that with a lot of new beginners in podcasting. There are some things that some hoops they need to jump through. But we did launch with Christmas in July because that was an obvious platform to jump off of and get going. And we knew it would take a little while. And I told myself at the beginning, I'm going to give this about 1.5 years, 2 years. If we can't get it going, then I'm going to have to put this little hobby aside and get back to the real world. But it did take off. And we've met a ton of people in the Christmas community, whether it's online or in real life, and they will take part of Christmas all year long. So we did launch with Christmas in July. And you're right, we do cover anything and everything Christmas. All things Christmas is open for discussion to cover. We have a vintage contributor who is just wonderful. And we have series that we feature at different times. We just feel like if the podcast can be uplifting, entertaining, even educational, it's worthwhile. And I know we don't cover, there are a lot of podcasts out there that are Christmas TV and Christmas movies, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's an awful lot of them. And we didn't want to be that. We didn't want to limit ourselves. We wanted to be able to talk about anything about Christmas that we came across, and that's kind of our platform.
I think it's great. I think it really, for people who love Christmas stuff, it really fits for anybody, because most people who like Christmas don't like just one thing. It's not just about the cookies. It's not just about Rudolph. It's not just about any one thing. They love it all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so great to be able to share that. I know when I was in broadcast radio, when I was new, I was the guy who worked Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably the only one who didn't mind it, because I felt like I was getting to share the holiday with everybody. You know, I mean, it was years before social media, but it was really everybody that I knew, all of my friends, my local family. I was with friends I hadn't met yet because I'm playing the music and they're all listening and calling in and asking for the Carpenters or Elton John or whatever. And it felt like getting to share that. And I'm sure you feel that way to an extent too, because you're getting to share all these things about Christmas you love with your guest and with people. And now, because of the internet, with people all over the world who can tune into your podcast.
Yeah. One of the greatest compliments that we get is like, they'll say something of, I just found your podcast. I'm going through and listening to every episode, which is great. And we strongly encourage that. But then they'll say something like, oh, wow, that was my favorite episode. I had no idea that this happened, or I learned so much from this, or that, it somehow triggers something in them that they either discovered something new that they didn't know before about Christmas, or it encouraged them to look at something about Christmas in a different way, or it even encouraged them to say, I love that episode on ornaments, and now I've got to add this to my collection. There's that sort of thing. And yeah, when you talk about someone reaching out to you and saying something that podcast really meant a lot to me. We had a gentleman who is, well, in his own right, he's a Christmas podcaster. And I had an episode where I talked about ancestral Christmas trees. And my guest is someone from the East Coast who was, he took his family history, the portraits, and literally decorated a tree with them. Now, in his own right, he is a vintage, not just enthusiast, but expert when it comes to Christmas ornaments, histories, and decorations. But this tree was just phenomenal. And I had someone who had lost his mother, and that tree meant a lot to him. He said, I've got to do something with my tree this year to honor her, because she instilled Christmas traditions in him. And I think a lot of us start out young and try to bring that memory of childhood Christmas happiness to life. But yeah, you're right, Ken. When you have an episode, like you say, that one listener that calls in on Christmas Day when you're responsible for holding the station down,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
they'll say, I'm alone at Christmas, would you play this song, or something like that. You do connect on a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about learning stuff, people tend to assume, because I do the Sounds of Christmas online radio station and have for years now, that I'm a Christmas music expert. And I don't like that title at all. I am a Christmas music enthusiast. I do love the music, and because of what I do, I know a lot about it, but I'm not an expert, and I'm constantly learning things. I'm finding songs and albums that are years, even decades old, that I didn't know existed, by artists that had hits that people have heard about. And I'm always surprised that, wow, I didn't even know this existed, and here it is. And I find things like this year, I discovered that the Eurythmics used to send out fan club things that were weird experimental recordings, sort of modeled after what the Beatles did. They were Christmas messages, little snippets of songs and stuff, and they're fun for fans, but I didn't know those existed. And that was back in the 80s that happened. Has there been stuff that, and I'm sure there has, that you've come across in doing your podcast that you were like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know that existed. Just learning new stuff.
Yeah, and it's happened with Mary too. In fact, um, Mary, as much as she loves Christmas, wasn't aware of the Montgomery Ward and Rudolph history. And so and so it was great that she got to learn and experience that. One thing, and in conjunction with that, on one episode, I interviewed Rick Goldschmidt, and he's kind of the Rankin Bass historian,
Mm-hmm.
and he's really knowledgeable. And there were insights that he shared, little tidbits, especially about the puppets themselves, that were just fascinating to me, because if you grew up watching those shows, your holidays weren't complete if you didn't see those shows,
Yeah.
you know, Rudolph and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. So yeah, I did. Now, one that I did purposely hoping that it would open the eyes of some of our followers was a Christmas music episode, but it was a very particular genre. And you mentioned the Eurythmics, and this episode blew me away. We did a new wave Christmas, and it was bands from the 80s and some from the 90s. And it's not an area where a lot of people will look for Christmas music. And that episode alone has been our highest downloaded episode. So in researching that one, I was able to come across, I would just type in a band or an artist name and see if they had anything for Christmas. And you can do all of this on Google or YouTube. And it's amazing. It's like you said, it's amazing who has Christmas music or Christmas shows out there that you weren't aware had them at the time.
Oh yeah. It is incredible. And not to sound like an old get off my lawn guy, but back when my love affair with Christmas music began, you haunted record stores, used record stores, looking for stuff, looking for things that you weren't even sure what you were looking for. But
Yeah.
now it's so much easier. There were songs that I used to look for that I considered sort of holy grails that I was trying to find. In the 70s, Billy Joel well, he didn't record, but he performed Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas in concert. And he did that a lot. There was so much publicity for his album. I can't remember if it was The Stranger or 52nd Street, but a bootleg recording of that became so popular that some radio stations actually played it thinking it was a real recording. And then CBS said, stop that. And it
Yeah.
went away. And I looked for that for years, but you have to, you have to go out to you had to go out to all the used record stores and go through the stacks, hoping you're going to find something. You don't know what it looks like. But now you could go to YouTube and type in Billy Joel, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, and you'll get tons of hits because that's one of his favorites to perform in December. And he's actually on his channel, on his YouTube channel, he has posted performances of that in recent years. So it's so much easier to find that kind of thing. But you're right, you can go, and YouTube is one of my favorite search engines to use because
Yeah.
you can go and type in the artist and Christmas and find, wow, the Goo Goo Dolls did Silver Bells years ago before they released a Christmas album. How neat. I want to hear that. It's so much easier to find stuff now. And it really is amazing. And I don't feel like, kids, you have it too easy today. I feel like this is really cool that I can find this stuff now. What's some of the favorite things that you can think of that you've discovered, not necessarily music, but just over the last couple of years of doing your podcast?
Well, it's probably a variety of things. I like history, so I also enjoy things related to Christmas and history. Um, but I also like vintage Christmas. So there are a lot of things that just somehow come to me. If you keep your eyes open or if you have something in mind, eventually those things seem to find their way to you, whether you put in a huge amount of effort or not. One example was a time I was with family and we were at a fall harvest days kind of celebration. And I live in the West. And in this particular area, they had this entire stable of old antique vehicles and things that would have been used at that time. And we're talking, when I say vehicles, I mean like wagons, covered wagons, farm equipment that was not mechanical, a variety of things. And hidden in that bunch was a sleigh, an authentic sleigh. Now, it needed a lot of TLC. I'm not going to lie. But I looked at that thing and I was amazed and I started posting about it. And I said, I found a sleigh. And it was something right off of Courier and Ives. It was
Mm-hmm.
that runner. You could just see how it would have looked in its prime. And before I knew it, somebody was contacting me and they said, those are collector's items. They still sell them today. That one is a such and such brand. It was probably around, it's amazing what people know.
Oh yeah.
So I did an episode on sleighs, and it really is a one horse or two horse sleigh. And I was amazed to see that there are auctions for those things that still go to this day.
Wow.
And people go and they will rent storage units to be able to keep them pristine. There's one particular brand that it's almost like a family tree, maybe a pedigree, and it goes from owner to owner to owner to owner. So whoever is the next person owning that sleigh, it gets recorded and it's kept track of. So that was fascinating to
Wow.
learn. So there are a lot of things that come along that, whether I'm purposely searching for them or they just fall into my lap, I'm grateful because I learned so much along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It really is amazing. I know when I mentioned that to somebody that I do this Christmas music station, usually you get an eye roll and they think of about 20 songs that you probably play and that's it. And I'm constantly finding so much more songs
Yeah.
I didn't know existed, artists I didn't know recorded songs, artists who recorded one particular Christmas song and then I realized they had a whole album, constantly finding new things. And and it's like that. I mean, Christmas music isn't the only part of Christmas that I love. I love all of the pop culture elements, the TV shows, the movies, the books, all of that stuff. And I'm constantly finding new things.
Yeah.
And it's really, it is kind of like a magic that you can discover and constantly discover new things over and over again. It's,
We found out we found out last year during COVID that people were turning to Christmas for therapy.
mhm.
They were locked in. They needed something to lift them out of a bit of a depression. especially if they had loved ones who were suffering with it. And people, Mary and I discussed it and we said, let's do this. Let's go all year, 2 episodes a month until we hit fourth quarter. And at fourth quarter, that's when we do an episode weekly. But we covered anything we could think of. And we tried to make it all so that it was something that would boost a person's spirit, whether they realized it or not. And it was amazing to see. It's like you said, you can listen to Christmas stuff all year long. And if you really allow yourself to really focus and get absorbed by it, there's a certain magic that comes with it, true Christmas spirit. And it will kind of give you a boost. It'll make you feel good. So we encourage it all year long. You don't always have to have a Christmas tree up, but just keep it handy just when you need a little oomph to get you through.
Oh yeah. Last year, I keep the Sounds of Christmas online station running all year long, and people come and go. The majority of people listen in October, November, and December. But last year, it was noticeable that more people were listening April, May, June, July, all over the world. People were tuning in, and there's comfort there. Absolutely. We've talked about a lot of different topics that you cover, and I know that you have a love for Christmas music. Are there any other favorite topics that you like to revisit, maybe in different ways, different elements?
Yeah, well, I mentioned we have a vintage Christmas contributor, and he makes regular appearances with us. His name is Benjamin Bradley. Something that I knew was happening last year, but I couldn't say anything about it. But he was also working on a Netflix series called Christmas Makeover. I can't really remember. He was given the name Mr. Christmas, and it was makeovers that he would go into certain people's homes. Now, by profession, he is an interior designer. But he also loves all things vintage holidays. And he is my guest that comes on, probably once every 3 to 4 months. And we cover a vintage Christmas topic. And I've been surprised how fun that's been and educational for other people. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of retro style Christmas items, particularly in decorations, that are coming back into the stores. If you're familiar with those ceramic lighted Christmas trees, it would have been the ones our moms would have made. And they actually had to go to the ceramic store to make them and clean them and paint them and everything like that. And now those are getting remade like crazy. So Benjamin joins me on a fairly regular basis, and we will talk about anything vintage. Like a lot of people don't know much about tinsel or some of the very, very earliest ornaments, or the history behind Germany and how much that country contributed Christmas decorations, foods, and traditions that we still enjoy to this day. So that's one that I have, but we also cover fun things too. We did an episode, and I kid you not, we were laughing the entire time. It was cats in the Christmas trees. Now, you said you have a dog.
Yes.
But we like to laugh and have fun too. And I talked with a vet. I said, look, this is a real problem. And we were collecting memes off social media because animals are often naturally drawn to a Christmas tree, whether it's artificial or real. You put that up in your house and it's like a magnet. They want to be in it. And so she gave us great tips. So it's anything's game as long as it reflects something about the true spirit of Christmas, whether that's joy, the practical side, the budgeting, the anything that really contributes to the lighter, more positive energy of the season.
Now, I know you've done several podcasts about Christmas music, and of course, those are among my favorites that you've done. We talked about genres and we've talked about collecting and some of that kind of thing. What are some of your favorite Christmas songs? Not just like Rudolph, but particular versions, some of the ones that really got you into a love of Christmas music?
Okay, So let me begin by saying I can't narrow it down because there are
Hmm.
so many. And
Right.
the reason, and you hinted at this, the reason that I don't generally listen to radio stations playing Christmas music is because their playlist is too short for me.
Yeah.
I want to hear much more than the same song after 2 hours. And I also love and can appreciate almost all genres of Christmas music. Having said that, and I'll also add this, having said this, and this is a little bit of breaking news a week or so ago, White Snake, if you remember that band, they're working
Yes.
on a Christmas album. Blew my mind. And if White Snake does White Christmas, I am really going to be floored. But if I step back and think about it, I'm sure that lead singer actually has some good vocals.
Yeah.
If you strip away some of their traditional sound, you know, there's probably going to be something good that comes from it. But when it comes to Christmas music, you're right. I do have some favorites, but I can't narrow down a list. But one of my all-time favorites will be "I'll Be Home for Christmas," and it's like you. Being in this industry, we've had to work those holidays. And even if you're in the same town where you're working, but you can't get to your family on opening day or at the dinner table when the Christmas turkey is coming out of the oven or any of those things. I happen to live far away from my family now, and that one always kind of, grips me because I wish I could be home at Christmas with my loved ones. And I will say I love everything about the crooners, but I also love traditional pop, a variety of other Christmas songs. So White Christmas is a favorite because I also love that movie. That was a tradition. My sister and I, the day after Thanksgiving was officially Christmas at our house. We had to honor Thanksgiving, which I didn't mind, but the day after the tree went up, music started playing, and we would start to watch that movie the day after Thanksgiving. So that song evokes a lot of just nostalgia for me. But I also love pop Christmas songs that are just little gems here and there, a variety of artists. It's hard for me to limit it because I find favorites every year and I think, oh, that's my newest favorite. And then, oh, that's my newest favorite. But it's rare that I find some that I actually don't like. I'll put it that way. But I've been amazed at some of the artists that come along and you're just like, wow, you did a Christmas song? I'm like, but I'm open to them, all of them. I will say I do have a few that I listen to every year. And I think I throw Mannheim Steamroller out there because it's my husband loves their music, but they really changed the game and the landscape of Christmas music
Mm.
when they came out with their unique sound.
Yeah.
Um, it's not that I have a particular song from them, but I love what they did of taking Christmas music and putting their own spin on it without destroying the real tunes and magic of it and making it appeal to a mass audience. So I give them props because I appreciate that.
Yeah. Mannheim Steamroller, that's one of the rare instances where I can vividly remember the first time I heard it. I remember walking into the record bar at North Hills Mall in Raleigh, North Carolina, and just stopping in my tracks. They had just put their first Christmas album out, and the employee had just put it on their system and it just started playing Deck the Halls, the first track on side one, and it just absolutely stopped me in my tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, this all at the same time, this sounds really familiar and it sounds unlike anything I've ever heard before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just amazing that they could do that and that they continue to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It is, I hate to keep using the word magic, but really when you put that music on, you get that feeling. And having, working in Christmas music for a long time, not all the songs hit me with that kind of magic still. I still like them, but I'm used to them
Yeah.
and I hear them often, and I even look at them as I'm making my playlists, and I look at them and I go, okay, I'll put this there and this there and this there. And to a degree, it has lost that kind of magic, but there are still some, like Mannheim Steamroller, that still do that for me. Silent Night, really good versions of that, always puts me in the spirit every time I hear it. Do you find, I guess, two-part question, do you find that some of the things that you associate with Christmas lose a little bit of that because of what you do? And if so, what are the things that still give you that Christmas spirit?
Yeah. A lot of people, they've associated, well, aren't you burned out about Christmas by the time it actually gets here? And I'm like, no, I've not done that yet, because I'm doing it from a different angle. I'm doing it as a creator, a producer, someone entertaining in that field. I'm not on the receiving end of enjoying Christmas during the holidays. And what was the second part of your question?
What are the things that, no matter what time of year, that give you that Christmas spirit?
Well, I will say that I do think one of the things about Christmas is doing something for someone else. I really do, whether that's helping them in a monetary value, or maybe it's just making them and taking them a plate of Christmas cookies or something. It is thinking of others. And I can remember as a kid, there used to be so much fun of making something up, and I'm going to surprise this person with whatever it is I created. It was probably some kind of paper craft, but there was joy in that, and there was purity in it as well. There was no motive behind it other than just to do something good and kind for someone else. And I think that is an underlying message that still goes today. I mean, if you look at Santa Claus, that's how it all began. It is doing things for others. And I hope that's what someone, when they listen to our podcast, they get something out of it like that. We're trying to give them something that will make them feel better. But, there's just so much about Christmas. And I think that's what people don't think about it. If they've not really dived into the Christmas spirit, it's available on so many levels. I mean, you and I love music, and you and I, being in the industry that we came from, and this may have happened to you with Mannheim Steamroller, if you're in a radio studio and you have to hear the same songs quite often in a short amount of time, we have a tendency to get burned out on them or tired of hearing them, and as you said, they lose their effect. But someone on the receiving end that only catches it once or twice a day, that song still has a lot of oomph and power behind it. But so far in doing this, I still enjoy Christmas. I love doing the creation process. That's my way of giving to others of this little bitty podcast that we do, a bit of Christmas spirit and joy. But receiving is, I get a lot out of it too. It does something for me. And then when the season does come along, I am ready for a rest. But the true Christmas spirit for me still lingers all year long. I don't know how else to really say it.
No, that's really good. And I totally get what you're saying. I remember one of my first radio jobs when I was working full time. The station gave everybody turkeys that year at Christmas time. There was a big tractor trailer that drove up behind the building where the station was, and we all went out, and they had all these frozen turkeys that they gave us. And I was a single guy, and I thought, really, this is nice and all, but what do I need with a 10, 12 pound turkey for me? And I took it down to the local shelter, and they were really happy to get it. And it was not a big deal. I mean, it's one turkey, and I have no idea how many people had, but it made me feel so good, so much better than hearing Deck the Halls Again. And it was just, it was just that little thing. And I'm not a hero or a saint or anything because I donated a turkey, but I gave something to somebody who needed it, who could use it.
Yeah.
And that really made me feel good. And it
Yeah.
was, and that's a little bit of the spirit that I try to recapture as often as I can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure you do too. And I'm sure that your podcast helps other people get that too, which is really cool.
Yeah. And with the podcast, and we don't just come out and say this on our social media sites or in the podcast, but um, we have a clean rating. We are non-political, non-religious, but also non-judgmental. And it's a safe place for people to come. That's just how Mary and I see it.
So the new season of Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe, the podcast, has just started. You have any surprises on the way? Any teases of upcoming episodes you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, coming up, we just dropped our first episode. We took a long winter's nap because last year was a little intense. So we dropped our first episode back for 2021 just a week or so ago. And oddly, it deals with Christmas music. And
Yay.
it's part of a new series. And the gentleman who joined me is a Christmas friend that we crossed paths online, like I do with a lot of people who appear on the show. And he is a collector of Christmas music, and he has over 600 Christmas CDs. And that's just the CDs. And he'll listen all year long, but he also has some vinyl, some digital. But we talked with him and how he got started on that journey and how it's turned him into a bit of a Christmas buff. So that was really fun. So Christmas Collections is going to be a new segment we're starting this year. And it's anything like there are people who collect Christmas Coca-Cola figurines and things. So I've got a guest coming on with that. Any kind of Christmas collections, people can contact us and we'll see about getting them on. One month we're going to be doing a show and I'm almost reluctant to share it, but at the same time, I'm too excited not to. And it's going to be a Disney Christmas and we're going to hit it from a variety of different angles. But now that the park in California has just opened, people went to Disneyland and literally were in tears because they felt like they were home again. So we're
Yeah.
going to talk about Disney Christmas from the vintage years to the ornaments to people who are all things Disney to some of the special people from the park. So that's going to be something we're really looking forward to. And so there are a few different things coming up along the way, and we'll also include our regular favorites, vintage, some special recipe things, which oddly people think recipes on a podcast, but you would be surprised
Oh, yeah.
what people tune in and we'll have people comment, well, I'm going to try that, but I'm going to do it this way instead. I'm like, you have at it. Ornaments. We've got ornaments coming up from Christopher Radko, vintage. I don't know if you're familiar with some of these, Shiny Bright. There are all kinds of Christmas ornaments out there, and those are really popular with those who collect ornaments. Just a ton of more Christmas stuff coming up. Next month, well, this month, I guess it should be today, we are honoring history and Memorial Day with veterans who served with Christmas and what their times were like with the season while they were away at war. So there are some special things coming up that we're excited about and Christmas destinations. And that one is going to be so fun. I can't wait to get that one off the ground. We're going to hit highlights of people that travel to specialty Christmas stores or historical marks, how they celebrate Christmas, variety of things like that. Christmas is all around if you just look for it. It
Yes,
may
yes.
only happen during a special time of year, but people love to talk about it. So people ask me, how do you come up with all these ideas? And I'm like, it's just there. I'm not, it's just there. If you open your eyes, you'll see it.
Yeah, it really is. I know for a long time, I didn't see it. I didn't see it everywhere. But once I really got involved in the station and it became a bigger part of my life year round, I did start to notice that, oh, look, there's a Santa over there. Oh, look, there's a garland here. You go into a used bookstore and there's a copy of A Christmas Carol. It is just amazing that it
Mhm.
really is everywhere. And talking about the collections, any chance you're going to have somebody on to talk about Department 56 houses?
I do have Christmas villages scheduled, but and you can't really talk about Christmas villages without talking about Department 56. I don't know if that's going to be the specialty though, but we can do it if you'd like us to.
Oh, I have. I'm turning around in my office to look. I have just boxes and boxes of them. I don't get to set them up every year because it takes a lot of time. But
And space. Yeah, you're right.
I this is way off track for a Christmas music thing. But I got to tell you, I have a love hate thing with Department 56. I got into them a long time ago when they introduced all of the Christmas Carol stuff. And I thought, well,
Mhm.
this is nice. I'll get the Christmas Carol set. That's all I need. I don't need the other things.
Oh.
But oh my gosh, it's it's an addiction and a habit. And I'm like, okay, well, this is really because they do such great work.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is really neat. Okay, I don't need the one that's a hard rock cafe in the North Pole. Really, that's not anything. But
Yeah.
then look, this is such a neat reindeer barn. It's got all their names on the doors. I gotta have that. So it can it can get out of hand and it can cost you a fortune, but it brings so much joy.
Yeah.
I just love those
Yeah,
things.
it does. And we got our mother-in-law. My mother-in-law started on that when she was still with us, and she loved it because so many of those homes reminded her of where she grew up in Holland, those tall, skinny kind of buildings.
Hmm.
And the Department 56 items. So as gifts, we started adding to her collection each year. And then the one year they came out with a windmill. Well, the windmill is the iconic emblem of Holland, along with tulips. And once that windmill came out, it was like, that's it. I know what I'm getting her for Christmas. And it was through Department 56. So even though they started out with a certain style, you're right. They really expanded and they
Yeah.
went so many ways. And when you buy Department 56, you are buying the name and you are buying quality. So a lot of people say, well, I don't know that I can afford them. But if you keep that in mind, then they're numbered. I believe they're numbered. So you're right. If you're a real enthusiast collecting these, then you will. But a lot of people will go to other varieties of villages, and that's enough for them. But the time it takes to set it up and set it up well,
Hmm. Yeah.
and to have a Christmas train go through it, and to have all the lights and everything, it can take time. But it is walking into, like, you see it, and it's this wonderland of
Yeah.
a true village. And it is kind of magical. It's like you say, the magic is there when you see it all set up beautifully.
It's funny and I I don't mean to keep bringing up things that show just how old I am, but I remember going into a shop in a mall when there were only 3 or 4 Christmas houses that Department 56 had.
Yeah.
They had a shelf where they had here's Ebenezer Scrooge's flat, and here's Scrooge and Marley counting house, and maybe the Cratchit's house, and that was it. And then on the next shelf, they had just as many pieces from Sleepy Hollow,
Mm-hmm.
and that was all they had. And then it just exploded, and there's so
Yeah.
many different Christmas villages, North Pole, Christmas in the City, on and on and on. And I remember as it was growing, I remember, okay, but I'm in control. I just want to get the Christmas Carol stuff. And then you see the stuff they do, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a little Christmas tree lot. How neat is that? I need to have it. It doesn't go with anything that I
So,
have, but I need, and I don't know where I'll put it, but I gotta have it. And then it just goes from there, and circling this all back around to music, I don't know if it's still available. I have it somewhere in one of these boxes. They put out a cassette that was music and sounds of the Christmas Village that you could play and just on a loop and
ooh,
have your little Christmas Village sounds up, and it sounds like a little Christmas city, and there's music in the background, and there's shoppers and stuff, and it's really it's silly and ridiculous, and also it's just really neat to be able to have that, and it sounds like your little village is really celebrating the holidays. and it's
Oh,
so cute.
wow.
And I should probably say at this point that Department 56 is not sponsoring this, and I'm not a shill for them. But
Well, you'll have to come back on my podcast and let's talk Department 56 as a collector because
oh,
I didn't know
anytime.
about that sound effects tape, and that sounds incredible.
Oh, I'll have to dig that out. Yeah, it is. I remember seeing it. And it's so funny. I'll see some of these Department 56 things and I'll think, oh, that's ridiculous. That's over the top. That's silly. And at the same time, I'll think, well, how much is it? Because I might need that. And Department 50, not to make this all suddenly about Department 56, but, they have limited edition pieces and
Hmm.
numbered pieces. And I thought, well, I don't need any of those. And then I would see one. I'm like, okay, well, I need that one. But then if you get that one, you have to get the others in the set. And I'm like, I don't. You're not going to get me. And they would. They had
You're such
this.
a sucker.
Oh yeah, they had
Neat.
this series of little houses that were houses for the elves in the North
Oh,
Pole, and each house spelled out had one of the letters in North Pole. So
uh-huh.
there's 9 houses. And I saw that and I immediately thought, okay, so now you're trying to sucker people into having to buy all 9 houses. How dare you? And then I'm like, okay, the N house is really kind of neat though. And I'd like to get that one. But if I get that, I have to get the others because they all match and it's a set. And I'm like, curse you, curse you
You're at
guys.
the
You're
checkout
sucking me
stand.
in.
Hand me that credit card.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to need to get a third job so that I can cover this. Okay, well, let's get back to what we were talking about.
Okay.
Is there anything that we've missed that you would like people to know about sleigh bells and mistletoe?
Oh, I don't know. It's just about the joy. I mean, we have fun doing it. We have fun talking about it. We want people to share it with others, not because we're trying to get download numbers or, I mean, that's helpful and we appreciate that. We appreciate good reviews, we appreciate good comments, but we welcome criticism too. If there's something you think we're doing wrong, we'll take it into consideration. We may not change, but sometimes I asked a few people, would you review this for me and give me your critique? And immediately they said, well, I would do this after hearing that. And it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that before? But we also want people to just enjoy it. We want you to escape with us and tell us what you want to hear as far as Christmas. Like you, Ken, Christmas music is huge for me. And I talk about anything from the 40s and 50s music right on up to today. I love it. There are going to be some things that I am not keen about, but we talk a lot about Christmas music, and those are some of our most popular downloaded episodes. In fact, Mary just texted me early this morning. She's on assignment in a town far away to cover a news story. But the Airbnb that she was set up in to stay overnight, they have Christmas albums and a record player out for their guests to use. Here it is, May, but there are all these Christmas music pieces of vinyl. She said, I don't even know who some of these people are, but this is crazy. But I would just say, if you think Christmas isn't around, look for it. Just keep your eyes open. Make a special point of trying to look for it. It's like a 4-leaf clover. It's there. It may be surrounded in a bunch of other clover, but you will often find a 4-leaf clover, not because it's hidden, but because you're looking for it. And that's the thing about Christmas joy. It's around. You just have to look for it. And I would say to anyone looking for Christmas joy any time of year, look to the podcast Christmas Community in podcast on social media, on an internet radio station that plays it all year long. And by the way, kudos to you, because jumping on that bandwagon before it got started, you are the workhorse pulling that along.
Well, thank you.
It's there. Just look for it. And if you need escape from your day-to-day life, from stress, this is a great way to de-stress.
Now, I listen to the Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe podcast on Spotify, but I'm sure you're available on lots of other places. When
Yeah.
people ask, where do you tell them to find you and your podcast?
Spotify is probably the biggest place. Deezer, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We're on a variety of those platforms. We are finding, though, that people join us on social media, and we get a lot of people who just download it from our social media sites. So we are on Facebook, Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe Christmas Podcast. Join us there. You'll find all of our episodes, plus other things that we post that are Christmassy and fun. We interviewed a reindeer farm last year that was being threatened to close due to COVID. And we said, I finally reached out to her and I said, I've been trying to reach you for over a year now. Would you please come on my podcast and talk about this? She said, I will, but I don't want to make it about fundraising or anything. And I said, we'll just throw in one line. But that podcast, because of the pictures she sent me that I could share on social media, those reindeer, especially the baby reindeer, that went crazy. People love seeing that. And it was at a time of year when you didn't think about Christmas, but the reindeer are growing. So Facebook, Twitter, we're at Bell Sleigh. So find us there. We'll post the same information. We're also on Instagram. We're thinking about getting on Pinterest soon. We're just trying to get all our ducks in a row. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to get a podcast up and going and keep promoting it on social media. And then hopefully our website will be coming sometime this year. And once we get that up, people can go just directly to the website and download each episode.
Cool.
But all of that, Spotify is probably one of the most well-known. There are other platforms. And also our hosting site, libsyn.com. You can find all of our episodes there. They are what we use to host our podcast. And technically, they have been great to support us and keep our podcast up and available. So that's where you can find us.
Terrific. Rikki, thank you so much for sharing your love of Christmas with us today and for spending so much time as we went
I'm sorry.
all over the place. No, you don't have to be sorry. I brought up all the Department 56 stuff.
It's been amazing. And just like you, I think when people will join the online Christmas community, they will find long lost friends that they didn't even know they had. And I would encourage you to do that, because it's like now I feel like, oh yeah, that's Ken over on the other side of the country. Yeah, I know him. And it is kind of one of those things. We are our own little community. A lot of people are welcome to come and join in. A lot of friends are waiting for you there. So thank you for having me on. And you'll be joining me on my podcast pretty soon. So I will definitely keep you posted about that.
Can't wait. And thanks again. And thank you for listening and helping this podcast continue to grow. We're on about 24 different podcasting sites now. And since you're listening to this, you obviously found us somewhere. But if there's another site you like to use for podcasts, check out our podcast page on our website for the complete list of everywhere you can listen to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. Again, the website is www.soundsofchristmas.com, and then just click on the podcast tab. For the Sounds of Christmas station to listen to the music, you'll need to stick with our website or our app in the Google Play Store. In the meantime, thanks again for listening. If you have comments or suggestions, feel free to reach out to me on social media or through the website. Thanks again, and may you always believe in Santa Claus.